Hi, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Wait, where are all the graduating students? You guys are the graduates. Who here are the employers? Employers are sitting here. Awesome. Okay. Okay. So first, I gotta say I'm from Singapore, so my bahasa Indonesia still belajar sedikit. So, but I'm gonna give the talk in English, and I hope. But what is more important is that I hope you take away a lot of these ideas about how to learn, right? And I think these are the most important. The graduation talk that I want to give you guys today is about the culture of an expert beginner, right? Which I think is the most important thing that you guys need to know as new guys who are now joining the coding industry, right? I'm probably not much older than all of you. I've been coding at this time for about 10 years. Actually, a bit more than that. If you count VB script, it's probably about 15 years. I started my first company when I was 14 in the web hosting field. As 14-year-old, I bought a server in the US and I started reselling it. So, but I think for someone who has been coding for a little bit longer than you, I wanted to just tell you some of the lessons that I've learned as a coder, and hopefully you can take away some of it. So I know it's a bit difficult for you guys to see. I just wanted to share a little bit more about my background, and then after that, I'm going to tell you a twist behind all this background. So, like I just told you, I've been in computers and starting all these little things since I was 14 years old. I coded first in VB script, then PHP and all that. And so you've seen the industry go through. When I was 18, I managed to get into Stanford to do computer science. So I worked in Silicon Valley for a while. And then after that, I came back as a Palantir. So the companies, I joined a few startups in Silicon Valley. At that time, it was a little bit like how Jakarta is now, like Tokopedia and all that, were all very small. And while at Stanford, there was a lot of guys who were there. And there was this Indonesian senior who was 1 year my senior. And one day in 2012, he said, hey, I'm coming back to Indonesia to start a company. So in 2013, I went to visit him. I was on this small little apartment in Taman Anggrek, right? Many years later, you might have heard of this company. It's called Traveloka, right? So all of these things all started from very small things, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about it. After that, I was the equivalent of a CTO in government in the police force. And then sometime 1.5 years ago, I came out to start Cita's tech team in Indonesia. We've actually hired Activate grads. This is Hedia, she's our product manager, where she melds a lot of the business skills that she knows with her coding skills that she learned at Activate. And your skills that you have learned today are very, very powerful, right? But the thing with all of this is that very often people look at all these resumes and they think, wow, that guy knows so much, right? But what today, I wanted to be very open with you and tell you what the actual truth is. Right? The truth is, like even though on LinkedIn it looks very nice, at one time all of us were beginners, right? When I was the CTO in police, it was a very big enterprise, right? I didn't get to code for 6 years. Instead, you manage a big budget and you outsource it at Accenture. So even when I came out 2 years ago, it was very difficult for me to even learn the stuff that today you guys know, React, right? I had to spend 1 month relearning all of these things because of React. When I first started, when I was a software engineer at Pivotal Labs, they had pair programming, and I wrote so many bugs that they didn't allow me to push to the code base for 1 week, right? So these are the stories that all of us, no matter where we are in our careers, when we started off, it was always very difficult, right? And as much as people always talk about, oh, you've got to do computer science, you've got to do computer science, you've got to do computer science, right? The honest fact is, when I first went to Stanford, I was not doing computer science. For 3 years, I was doing economics. So I don't know what all your backgrounds are, but even for most of my studies, I wasn't doing computer science, right? All of this was just learning how to be an expert beginner and keep learning over time, right? And even when I did computer science, because I rushed the entire 4-year course in 1 year, there were so many times that I didn't do well, that I failed, and I didn't do well. These are things that I didn't even show my parents. Right, but here you can see that I failed the introduction to computer science multiple times. No credit, B, right? For Asian to get B in America is very, very tough, right? Statistical computing, fail, right? But all of us, and why I'm not afraid to tell you all of this, is that last time when I first started doing this computer science stuff, I felt like an imposter, right? I was at Stanford, and the guys who go to Stanford to do computer science, they are really, really good, I remember taking a class with one guy, and I was like, oh, I need to learn this programming language. And he was like, yeah, I invented the programming language. I was like, I guess I'm not going to fail this. I'm going to fail this class, right? But the thing with all of us and with you guys today for Hacktivate, I think what you guys are very, 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 very brave to make this switch into computer science. I don't know what all your backgrounds are. I remember interviewing the last batch of Hacktivate graduates, Arnold, Hedia, and all of you guys bring such interesting life experiences, right? And now you're entering computer science, right? The thing which I want you guys to avoid is that imposter syndrome, and just knowing that your life experiences that you bring to the table now make you even better as a programmer as well, right? So I think I just wanted to I don't want to give a talk which is all about a lot of other stuff, but I just wanted to tell you just 5 very simple steps that I think have worked for me, and I hope that you will take with you as you go through your journey as a software engineer as well, right? The first is that I want to show you guys what a calendar event that I send myself literally for the past 6 years, even when I was in police, when I was in other things. What I do is that in the mornings, when I first got to the office, there were these things like HackerRank, right? Codility, all these computer puzzles. In the past, we had to go to the library, borrow the C++ book, and take all the quizzes and things, right? But now you have HackerRank, you have Codility. If you can set aside 2 hours each morning to just do very deliberate practice, right? And understand like, okay, greedy algorithms, dynamic programming, all these little things. The art of practicing very deliberately every 2 hours every day will slowly allow you guys to become very powerful programmers, right? At the end of each day, I spend about 30 minutes reading about on Reddit, I read on Twitter, and I just understand more about what are the new frameworks, new ideas all coming up. People are always writing tutorials about code. If you can just spend 30 minutes reading them each day, on the bus, on the train or anything, you will become a very good programmer and practice every day. The second is that I see a lot of beginner programmers, when they first graduate from Hacktivate or any of these coding boot camps, they look out at the entire field of software programming, and there's so many things, right? And then one day you start trying to learn Golang, another day you try to learn compilers, another day you try to learn TypeScript, right? And after that you get so intimidated because there's so many roads in front of you, right? TypeScript, Golang, everything, right? And then you end up not taking what is the most important thing, which is to just learn one thing, right? What you need to practice is to just take one very simple thing. Don't worry about how many things you don't know. For each day, just make sure that you take one step forward. And after that, one step after that, right? Don't get scared, right? Because there's just way too many things to learn in programming, right? Every language that you see will get outdated someday. Every concept, every framework, React one day will become like Java, right? And will become like COBOL before that, right? People will use it less and less, and people will use more things. Just focus on learning one thing at a time, right? Number 3, the thing that has worked a lot is that, and this one it might be a bit controversial, so I'm sorry to the Hacktivate staff if it contradicts anything which you say, right? Even for what you have learned, right, as a web developer, there's specializations after that. And I'm sure you guys have learned all this. There's front end, there's back end, and there's DevOps, right? What I see, which is a big problem, is that people always look at so many things, and then you get very scared, and you basically try things a little bit of front end, back end, but you never truly become an expert in one thing, right? But the thing is, in the software world, the software world rewards high specialization and high expertise. If you know everything about the browser render loop, you can, in theory, contribute to Redux right now, right? So my recommendation, especially when you're a beginner, is to just learn and become a master in one thing first. Because once you have learned to master one thing, you then learn how to master anything. So just master one thing first. But at the same time, you have to gain a deep appreciation and rough understanding of everything else, right? All of these things over here, right? And for coding, it's just too many things. These 3 things are the developer roadmaps, right, that are on GitHub. You guys should take a look. It's a very good way of knowing what you don't know, right? And if you look at this, there's just way too many things over here, right? And that's why very often I find for beginner programmers, just focus on one area first and learn everything, become an expert in that. Later on, then you try to diversify your skill set. Even as a CTO today, I have to be very honest, I don't know a lot of things. To be honest, my React knowledge is not very strong, right? Why? It's because in my role as a CTO, my main job is actually the DevOps part. right? I can't be looking over into like hooks and all that, right? That one is really given to the front-end engineer. My main job is to figure out whether the security, port ingress, Kubernetes, right? Ingress, outgress, how to make sure that we have security and all that involved, right? The industry will move so fast, right? But if you just master one thing, you will learn how to learn and be able to master anything, right? Next thing. Okay, this is a little bit of a funny thing, but it's related to continuously learning. This is a hack that worked for me over the last, ever since about 2008. So, for those of you who are, I'm not that old, right? I'm a bit older than I look, but so when in the early days in like 2000s, 1999, all of us would basically go to the library, borrow that C++ book, bring it home, flip it open, and then we'll do all the exercises in there, right? It was so difficult. It's so difficult to concentrate because you're reading a telephone directory. The book is this thick, right? My mother would take it and used to swat the flies, right? But today, it's incredible. Any time in the world, even if you're on busway, if you're on the MRT, I know only a few stops, right? Gojek probably a bit difficult. But anywhere in your homes, anywhere, you can download the YouTube video in the office, right? And then I'll bring it on my laptop in busway, and then I'll watch the video. And just by watching and just listening to some of it, even if you don't understand most of it, right? Do you all learn GraphQL in Hacktivate? You did? Wow, okay. I should have used a different example. I'll be honest, I don't know anything about GraphQL, right? I understand its shape, you can shape the API call, right? But I don't really know how to understand. I don't know it, right? In the same way that I don't know about Istio for Kubernetes, I don't know about how RS-256 in cryptography works, right? But as I fall asleep every night, right? This one, for those of you who are married, you've got to get your wife to buy in first, or your husband to buy in, right? And some nights it's a bit difficult, but we're not here to talk about that, right? But if you can fall asleep every night watching a video about some new technical concept, right? Every day for the next 365 days, right? You will become a lot more knowledgeable about everything, right? And it's the perfect thing to do at night, because for those of you who can't sleep, watch code videos. Confirm can fall asleep. It's so boring, you will confirm fall asleep. No matter how stressed you are, you listen about Postgres, locking, unlocking. After a while, you're also like, oh, now you fall asleep, right? But the knowledge that you get, little bit by little bit, you will learn a lot, right? And if you don't have good Wi-Fi at home, usually what I do in the past, last time in police, when I went on night shift, there is no internet connection. What I'll do is I'll download the YouTube video, and then I'll go to my post and I'll watch it every night. The last thing which I really like to share with you guys is about interacting with the community, right? And this maybe goes back to about schools, and it also talks about employers, and it talks about everything. And this is really something for all of us, right? What I see happen in Asian cultures, right, is that we are built around a culture of exams, right? We study for the exam and we take the exam, one person, right? But when I went to Stanford, it was very different, right? It was very weird, right? People will help each other. People will share knowledge with each other, right? Out of nowhere, I didn't know any. At that time, Golang was brand new. There was no tutorials at all. 2012, right? I posted on Facebook, can someone teach me Golang? Right? This Google engineer out of nowhere said, yeah, sure, come to my house. We'll teach you. I said, house. And so we ended up in the Google campus, and he just taught me Golang from there, right? But the key thing is that culture, and coding culture, is really built around open source. It's built around sharing knowledge, right? It's built around network effects. The more that you interact with the community, the more the community will pass knowledge to you, right? In Hacktivate, who are the ones who always bring the new concepts in? Without knowing who anybody is, I'm guessing it's you, and maybe the Hacktivate instructors, right? They are sharing knowledge, right? And when you share knowledge, not only do you become better at using the knowledge, you also gain a friend. And eventually that friend will also share knowledge back to you, right? Over the past years, right, I've been asking and answering questions on Stack Overflow. I read our JavaScript and I argue with people on it, right? They talk about whether Vue or React is better, right? Read through and talk and put those ideas out there. You will learn a lot from debating with people, right? And you see the guys, even in the React community, are very open. Dan Abramov, if you've ever tried to send him a question on Twitter, he will reply, right? You don't need to be in America, right? Now with the internet, any of us can sit anywhere in the world and we'll be able to interact and communicate with people as if we were sitting in Google's campus in Mountain View. And that is very powerful, and you need to take advantage of it, right? And so maybe the last thing that I really wanted to say very much as a beginner programmer is when I first started, I was very scared, right? When I first went for my first job at Pivotal Labs, I was actually programming with this guy who was a core contributor to the Python, right? He wrote PyPy, the compiler PyPy, right? And I was there and I didn't even know how to do a list comprehension, right? The thing is, really don't panic. Everybody in the industry was a beginner once, and we know what it's like to be a beginner. You will find that the more someone knows, the more willing they are to teach beginners. Because when you look at the vast amount of knowledge, you only understand that one person can't know everything. It's not possible. If you ask me now how React hooks work, quite honestly, I roughly know the syntax. I don't know how it works. I'll probably go to you and be like, hey, can you teach me React hooks? Right? Or can you implement it? And then I'll read the GitHub pull request. Right? Don't panic. Right? This community is unlike any other industry in the world. Right? It's unlike any other industry. And people are willing to mentor you. People are willing to teach you. And it's very powerful. Right? And trust the process. Learning, what we think learning is, we always think it's a straight line all the way up. Very rarely learning is a straight line. What you will find, any of you guys did physics or engineering before this? Engineering, physics, graphs? What we will find is that learning is always a step function, right? During the plateau, you're struggling like crazy just to understand how, I don't know, React works or the browser works, right? But once you get it, boom, right? And then you're stuck at the next level for a long time. And then boom, stuck at the next level, right? Very often when you're stuck at this plateau, it feels like you're running against the wall and nobody understands it. Don't panic. This is part of learning. But one day, one fine day when you're just looking at all of it, it suddenly all makes sense, right? Usually when a friend helps you to understand it. And then you're standing here and you're looking down at everybody and you're telling them, don't panic, right? And next thing is to really, you must understand that the journey that you are embarking on, if you choose to be a software engineer, right? There are many paths to using the skill that you have learned, right? For Hedia, being a product manager that knows code is very powerful, right? But whatever it is, this skill will take you more than 10 years, right? It will take you 10 years or more. That's why every time I walk into a bookstore, I always see, learn C++ in 7 days. Nonsense, right? In a way, even boot camp, learn React in 3 months, right? You can learn it, but to really become an expert, 10 years, right? It's a lot of this step function just running against the wall over and over again, and nothing makes sense. After this, you've learned imperative programming. Now, the next thing is functional programming. Do you all learn functional programming yet? Lambda.js. To be honest, I don't really even understand it. Like Haskell, OCaml, these languages like Lisp are so difficult to learn because everything is recursion, you know? You have to really dedicate yourself for 10 years to this whole life of just frustration of not knowing what is going on, right? But slowly, at the end of 10 years, you look back and you realize, wow, I know a lot. And then that's when you come back to Activate and you can become an instructor, right? Okay. I have one last small thing to give you guys, and I think this is something that will benefit anyone because it is about supercharging your learning process. So we talk about how to learn in 10 years. I'm going to teach you 2 techniques that I think can help you move that learning in 10 years to learning in 2 years instead, right? The first is about learning in public, right? For a lot of us, we are very scared of showing that we don't know something, right? We are very scared to show that we don't know something. Because all the time we go for interviews, they're like, what do you know? I say React, right? But actually, we are very scared to say that we don't know, right? And more importantly, we are scared to learn in public, right? So what is actually the most interesting thing is called what I call learning trails. As you learn, it's like a car, right? You drive a car and you have exhaust coming out, right? As you learn, you should also have exhaust coming out in the form of like a learning trail. When you learn something, quickly go write an article about it, right? Write a blog about it, write a Medium post about it, write a tutorial about it, create YouTube videos, right? Keep learning in public, even if you're wrong, and if you write the wrong tutorial, then Abramov or someone will take over and help you fix it, right? And that is actually something that is very powerful, right? And the last thing, and maybe this is a little bit more controversial as well, if you want to get a high revenue job or high salary job, you always have to specialize in the new, right? And that is also part of always keep learning, right? In software, the problem with software is that all of us become commodities over time, right? The more someone learns something, right, there is no such thing as an expert, right? Because experts tend to be either deprecated or outdated after a while, right? And for us, we have to always keep learning, right? You can't be too early to market because there's no demand, right? But the sweet spot is like a lot of these new technologies, and if you always keep specializing in the new, you will always have a job out there in the world, right? And so these are the 2 things that I just want to leave you. Again, 5 principles and 2 things. I hope this is really the start of your learning journey. I'm really excited to see what you guys do and grow as software engineers over the next 30 years. Yeah, otherwise.